You are currently living through the greatest, quietest wealth transfer in modern history, and the shocking truth is that this massive redistribution of wealth is not an accident. It is a design. Look closely at your own life, at your neighbors, at the vast majority of the English-speaking world. Do you feel genuinely wealthier than you did 5 years ago? Your paycheck may be nominally higher, your retirement account balance may look bigger on paper, but can you honestly say you feel the stability, the purchasing power, the real tangible progress that your parents took for granted? For most people, the answer is a profound, uneasy no. You are working harder, your productivity is up, you are saving diligently, yet every single trip to the grocery store, every record-breaking gas price, every jump in your rent or mortgage payment acts like a silent, invisible tax draining your future. You have been told this phenomenon is simply inflation, a natural, unavoidable economic force, or perhaps just a result of geopolitical instability. That is the first, most dangerous illusion. The reality is that the dollar, the anchor of the global financial system, is not losing value by some cosmic chance. Its value is being transferred away from you by deliberate financial and monetary policy. This is the ultimate financial trick, the one governments have used for millennia, and the one that is currently eroding the very foundation of your savings, your retirement, and your family's future security. The question you must confront right now, in these critical first 30 seconds, is this. If the dollar is designed to lose value, if your life savings are being systematically diluted, who is on the other side of that transaction? Who profits when the world's most powerful currency is devalued by design? The answer is not found in complex conspiracy theories. It is rooted in economic history, in a playbook that was perfected centuries ago and institutionalized by the modern state. To understand the present theft, we must first confront the history of the trick. Go back over 2,000 years to the power center of the Western world, ancient Rome. The Roman silver denarius was the bedrock of their empire. Initially nearly pure silver, trusted across vast territories. It was more than just a coin, it was confidence in physical metal form. But running an empire is monumentally expensive, especially when financing endless military campaigns and vast infrastructure projects. Taxing the citizenry directly to cover these costs is politically suicidal for any leader. So the emperors turned to a far subtler, more insidious method, debasement. They would quietly melt down the silver coins and remint them with a progressively reduced silver content, replacing the missing precious metal with cheaper base metals like copper. They would then issue the debased coin at the same face value, pretending nothing had changed. The Roman state got to spend twice as much with the same original amount of silver. The profit was instantaneous for the government, but the consequence for the ordinary Roman. Their stored wealth was ruined, prices skyrocketed, not because supplies were suddenly scarce, but because the money itself had lost its inherent value. When confidence in the currency evaporates, society itself begins to fracture as trade fails and savings become meaningless. This was the silent tax on the population, a sophisticated mechanism that kept ordinary Romans financially dependent while the imperial machinery kept running, accumulating wealth and resources at the top. This same technique was perfected and institutionalized in the English-speaking world with the rise of the modern banking state. Think about the founding of the Bank of England in 1694. It was fundamentally a financial instrument born of war. The British Crown desperately needed vast sums of money to finance its wars with European rivals. Wealthy investors and powerful bankers provided the capital by purchasing government bonds, the first modern national debt. In return, the Crown guaranteed permanent interest payments. This seems like a simple transaction until you ask the critical question, who paid the interest? The common people, through new, unavoidable taxes levied on everyday necessities like salt, beer, and cloth. The wealthy lent the money and earned secure, guaranteed interest. The ordinary person paid higher taxes to fund those very interest payments. This was the birth of the national debt, a financial system dressed up as patriotic necessity, yet its core function was and remains a massive ongoing and hidden wealth transfer from the taxpayer at the bottom to the bondholder at the top. The British perfected this model over centuries, using this debt mechanism to finance the wars that built the largest empire the world had ever seen, all paid for by the quiet continuous drain on the population's future savings and labour. Debt became permanent, and the mechanism for upward wealth consolidation was institutionalized. The key takeaway from this long history, from Roman denarii to British bonds, is not about silver or gold, but about the unbroken pattern of power. When governments need to finance immense, politically sensitive spending, whether it is imperial expansion, global wars, or modern-day stimulus, they will never openly tax the rich and powerful enough to cover the cost. They will instead resort to hidden financial tricks that exploit the masses, debasement and debt-fueled devaluation. Debasement, or inflation, as we call it today, is the silent mechanism that keeps the majority dependent while consolidating power and wealth for those who control the issuance of currency. This historical pattern sets the stage for the modern crisis, because the greatest trick of all was yet to come. It was the moment the world's currency was completely detached from any tangible anchor, turning the entire global economy and the savings of every English-speaking citizen into a perpetual debt machine that transfers trillions. That defining transformation happened in the heart of the Anglo-American financial system. As World War II ended, the economic power of the United States, which held 2/3 of the world's gold, set the new rules at the Bretton Woods Conference of 1944. The US dollar was crowned the world's reserve currency. Crucially, the system promised that foreign central banks could exchange their dollars for gold at a fixed rate of $35 per ounce. The American population worked and saved under the assumption of stability, believing their money was a store of real value, backed by gold. The government, however, had inherited the ultimate superpower, the ability to issue the world's reserve currency, and they began to abuse it. They started printing more dollars to finance the Vietnam War and massive domestic social programs than their gold reserves could possibly back. The world grew suspicious, and nations began to demand gold in exchange for their swelling piles of cheap dollars. The confidence that anchored the system was failing, the gold was leaving Fort Knox, and the global financial experiment was reaching its critical failure point. Then came the Nixon Shock of 1971. On a Sunday night, President Richard Nixon unilaterally announced that the US would suspend the convertibility of the dollar to gold. This was the single most important financial event of the last century. It was the final, total severing of money from any physical reality. The gold anchor was broken. Money was no longer a promise backed by metal, but a promise backed by nothing more than faith in the state and the military power of the United States. This moment unshackled governments worldwide. Now the printing press was truly free. The shift from a gold-backed system to a pure fiat system, a system based on government decree, is the design that enables the invisible wealth transfer you are experiencing today. This freedom allows the US Treasury and the Federal Reserve to print dollars endlessly to finance any spending necessary: wars, bailouts, stimulus packages, and an ever-growing national debt that now exceeds $35 trillion. This process enables the Cantillon Effect, the financial mechanism that silently transfers wealth. Think of it, when trillions of new dollars are printed, who gets them first? The government, the major financial institutions, and their primary partners. They use these fresh, cheap dollars to buy up assets, stocks, real estate, commodities, before the effects of the new money, inflation, have had time to spread throughout the economy. They profit by acquiring real assets with money that has not yet lost its value. By the time that new money filters down to the ordinary worker in the form of a slightly higher wage, prices have already gone up significantly, wiping out any perceived gain. The winners are those closest to the money source, the financial elite, the major asset holders, and the government that gets to borrow and spend with impunity. They borrow a high-value dollar today and pay it back years later with a low-value inflated dollar. They profit from the design. The losers are the majority of the English-speaking population, the savers, the retirees on fixed incomes, the hourly worker whose wages constantly lag behind the rising costs of housing and food. Their labor and their stored savings are silently devalued to fund the elite's spending and asset accumulation. The modern design relies on two primary financial tricks to keep the wealth transfer flowing. First, the inflationary drain, where the Federal Reserve's continuous need to print money to fund national debt and political projects devalues your savings and wages, making you permanently poorer, while transferring purchasing power to asset holders. This is not a mistake. It is a feature of the fiat system. Second, the debt trap. As the cost of essential living, especially housing, education, and healthcare, outpaces wage growth, the average family is forced to take on more debt just to maintain a basic middle-class lifestyle. They become trapped in mortgages, car loans, and credit card debt, all denominated in the same devaluing currency. This consumer debt is the product that makes the financial elite wealthy, transforming the borrower's future time and labor into a guaranteed, permanent stream of interest payments for the creditor. You are not just paying interest. You are paying the rent to live inside a system designed to profit from your dependence and instability. The system will continue to repeat these tricks because they are politically expedient and structurally profitable for those in power. No politician will ever win an election by promising to endure real austerity to strengthen the currency. They will always choose the path of least resistance, print, spend, devalue, and blame external factors. They will perpetuate the illusion that the money you hold is real, that the system is stable, and that the rising cost of your life is just the cost of growth. The ultimate truth that history reveals is this: financial freedom is possible, but it cannot be given to you by the system because the system profits from your dependence. To survive this design, you must understand the pattern and act defensively. The survivors of every historical currency collapse, from ancient Rome to the modern crises of hyperinflation, were not the ones who trusted the government's promises, but the ones who doubted first. They built real wealth outside the paper system. That means recognizing that wealth is not measured in the number of dollars you have, but in the assets you own that governments and central banks cannot simply print more of. Real wealth is productive businesses, essential skills, durable goods, land and resources that hold value across economic cycles. It is the ability to produce value when paper promises fail. When money stops being real, society still needs food, shelter, and trade. The final critical takeaway is that financial education is not a luxury. It is the essential weapon of resistance.